All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Cleaning Hustle podcast. I'm super excited today. I've got an amazing, fantastic guest with me. His name is Rick Foreman. Rick, you're a certified Maxwell coach, right?
Yes.
And you're also Lean certified,
Yes.
if I'm remembering that correctly. Yeah. Okay, awesome. You and I have known each other for 15 years, 12 years?
15 at least, probably 20 we're pushing.
I was going to say, because I think that my daughter was like 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah, we're pushing 20.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Went by fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about the 4 Ps of purposeful living in 2025. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's it. If we're rolling out as a leader or entrepreneur, what does that look like? How do we make this year different than last year? And what's the key to that? And so I think purpose is going to be our key theme today. And how do we dial into that a little bit more, rolling out of 24 to 25?
Yeah. So you're going to be speaking at our Solutions and Success on February the 13th. Yep. I believe that's a Thursday. And so probably most people that see this podcast are going to watch it after the fact, but I'm going to do a little commercial here so that we can push it out before. But so yeah, I'm super excited because you're going to get to speak at our Solutions and Success lunch, and that's just an opportunity for people to get to know you as an individual, kind of find out who you are, and if they like what they see, maybe they can use you for leadership training and coaching purposes down the road. And so we'll put your information in the bottom of this, in the comments section of this YouTube, and then they can contact you, and hopefully you can help some people out, because that's what it's all about, right?
For sure, adding value to others.
Yeah, so I am excited about this session that we're going to have, and I'm just going to let you dive in and start talking about what are our 4 Ps and kind of just go through that and see how we can help some young entrepreneurs. We are kind of focused on the cleaning industry on this podcast, so anything that you can think of that may be relevant for cleaning industry owners. But we also have a mixed group of property managers and other things like that that also watch the channel. So I think you can kind of bring that around and kind of work all of those pieces together. But before we get all that going, tell a little more than my intro. Tell a little bit more about yourself and kind of your history and what you're currently up to.
Right. Well, I've been in manufacturing for 46 years now, which kind of shows my age, but most of that's been in some leadership aspect of training and developing other young leaders, growing the people more than the business, honestly, from that perspective. And we've done it in the community arena you and I were involved in, as well as businesses, small businesses, big businesses, tier ones in aerospace, telecom, and everything in between, you know. From one point of view, putting landing gear on the space shuttle, to a Joint Strike Fighter F-35, to making some signs for Chili's or Taco Bell, something like that. But the constant with all of that is working with people, and that's always been my passion of how can you help others? How can you add value to them? How can you serve them to accomplish, you know, their purpose or the purpose of the organization from that point of view? So my entire life, honestly, since the age of 16, has just been really focused on that. How can I help others in whatever they're doing or trying to accomplish? My favorite book always talks about, you know, his plans are for peace and prosperity and those things, and kind of have that known thing you're supposed to do. So for me, if I could help somebody find their purpose and fulfill it at the highest degree, then that kind of nails my purpose down too. But yeah, 46 years, really about only 3 or 4 companies during that time. Grew up in it, started out, literally, you want to take it to the cleaning business. In 1978 of April, I started cleaning. That was my job. I was cleaning machines, bathrooms, and all of that. So if you want to tie it into our business focus here, my entire career started at that. And then how do you serve others even at that level?
Right.
You know, and how do you do it with excellence? And how do you do it with intention? And so my entire career start was literally on cleaning. So where I started even helping roof and cleaning up after a construction job and cleaning up a house or facilities and that. So my teenage years, I did some bricklaying, did some roofing, helped some carpenters, and then moved into really it was facilities maintenance of serving a big aerospace company that was making the landing gears and stuff, and then eventually just serving to a point to where helping kind of run and manage the place to at a higher level. But yeah, it literally started out in the cleaning business, many years ago. So,
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story.
yeah.
It's kind of funny because I was listening to you and you're like, I was building landing gears for the space shuttles and then signs for Taco Bell or whatever. And one end, it's kind of like the exact extreme opposites of one from the other. So, I think the story behind that is that the principles that you apply, whether you're building a landing gear for a space shuttle or whether you're building a sign, even though one's more critical than the other, the basic principles still apply. As you mentioned a minute ago, is that for the principles of excellence and really doing everything to excellence. And as you were saying, I was thinking about a conversation we had with our team this morning in our sales meeting. We were talking about that extra. I believe that the difference between doing something half-heartedly and doing something in excellence is only 1%. It's taking this step of going, instead of I'm going to lay this here on the table, I'm going to take one more step and put that in the drawer where it belongs. And I was telling my team, I said, when I was younger and in my teenage, early 20s, I was a slob. Like I was that guy that you couldn't get in the front seat of my car because I had Coke bottles everywhere, and it was and it was embarrassing. I'd have friends that want to ride with me, and I'm like, yeah, kick out all those bottles or whatever. And I suddenly started realizing that if I just apply 1% of excellence, so 1% was every time I get out of the car, I'm just going to grab my trash from that ride and I'm going to take it with me and put it in the trash, and now I have a clean car every single time. And so I think it's just really cool to think about the excellence piece of what we do. We want to start everything off with excellence. And so as we're applying these 4 P's, we do that with excellence, we do that with integrity, and we try to apply those through that whole process. And it doesn't matter if you're building a space shuttle or a sign or cleaning a toilet. Doesn't matter. You can still do all those things with a servant's attitude and with excellence.
Right. You are running a bit ahead to the...
I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect because number 6 on the purpose process is the +1. And I
didn't even read your notes, and there you go.
The 1%, or I've always used that 211 degrees, water's hot, 212 degrees it boils, produces steam, can move a locomotive. And so the +1, that is part of it. The +1 in anything, is it to pick up the paper? Is it, I'm wired opposite, so I get frustrated if there's clutter and stuff, and I'll start, But so I think, if I was at the store, where do I take the cart back? Do I take it back or do I leave it there?
Right.
Or if somebody left something down, or even in the plant, if there's a part of a pallet that broke off sitting in the plant, or a piece of trash on the plant, do I just walk by it or do I pick it up? Just the little things, like to your point, it's just the +1, and it's a bit of awareness and a behavior change, but it is that thing. And then if you think, no matter how many team members you have, at one point we had a place that had 600 team members, and if you just added that 1 minute or that +1 of anything,
now you're at 600%.
Yeah.
Instead of just 1%, because you can multiply that whole group together. If each one person does 1%,
it compounds.
Yeah.
And your influence, whether it's productivity, whether it's profit, whether it's just taking care of a customer, whether it's building a value system within your team, building a culture, that exponentially begins to grow. And now you've solidified something that's a difference maker. It's influencing for good in personal life, in business, in community, whatever that is, and that begins to do it. But you're right. I've always thought of that. Matter of fact, years ago, I thought, if I had a consulting company about helping people get better in leadership, what would I call it? Now, the name's already taken, but the first thing that popped in my mind was what you just said. I would call it +1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it really is that next thing. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is the +1. We'll hit a little bit on position. Where are you? Where is your team? How did you end 2024? And so kind of wrapping our head around the current state. What did it look like? Did we accomplish what we wanted? What did we leave on the table? And then we'll kind of look at that and go into how do we prioritize 2025 on those levels as well. One thing I want to hit on, I think, is critical because there's so many things that can be done. The question is, what should we be focusing on? And I think purpose filters that out for us. And I think if we can get closer to the purpose, we'll get closer to the right priorities that'll get to the +1. And then we'll hit after that. And once you kind of know the purpose, then you got to ask, what do we keep doing, but also what do we stop doing? And that's the pruning stage. Because some things is maybe if you really get to the purpose and that becomes your filter, things come across your table or come to you as a leader entrepreneur. Even the facilities business, you may have an ideal customer, you may have a certain size, a certain number of locations, a certain amount of revenue that fits your team members, and your structure or how you want to grow. And then if it doesn't fit that purpose, then you can filter that out automatically. And then you're opening up the capacity of your team and yourself as a leader to continue to grow to hit those targets. But the purpose becomes your filter. Somebody comes along and they have this thing, man, it looks good. It's so golden. Man, that looks so awesome. Man, I don't know if we can do that. I think we could do that. Man, maybe we ought to try to do that. You could go back to your purpose and go, man, that's a hard no. And you could look at something you're doing and going, why do we keep doing that? Example of that real quick before we get to it is we had a value stream at the last place. And it looked good and it kind of fit with the other value streams, but it really never was profitable the way it needed to be. But because there was hope for it, tried new sales leaders, new general managers, new marketing, new everything to build it. In 8 years, it never made a dime. And it came to questions like, okay, if you want to grow and be a profitable organization and have that influence, even for your own team members, why are you keeping that? And I think that's a hard one we'll look at and hit on just a little bit today is there something we need to say no to?
Right.
And how do we know to say no to it? If we get to the purpose, I think that helps us get there a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the last one is just practice. How do you practice this? And that's just being intentional as leader. We'll hit on that. But
all right. Well, awesome. Let's dive in. I'm excited.
Well, this position, I got a couple of quotes here because I like what people have to say, and I think they kind of fit what we're talking about. But Alfred, I won't butcher his last name, but Monapert, he said, don't confuse motion with progress. A rocking horse keeps moving but does not make any progress.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. It reminds me of that commercial where those guys are racing the rocking horses. That's so true, though. It's so true.
There's an old picture of a Lego cartoon, and it's old school where they're pulling this cart, and it's got square wheels on it. And there's like 4 guys, they're straining, they're pulling this thing, and all of that. Over to the side, there's a guy standing there with a round wheel and saying, hey, this might help. And the 4 people tugging on this cart go, man, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to stop that.
We don't have time to change these wheels out.
They're square and all that. We've never used ones look like that. It's round. What's going on, right?
Right.
So sometimes looking at that too is, what happened? Did we make progress? What did 2024 look like? And I think that's number one on I would call it the purpose process is be still and know. And you got to say, what's the current state? What worked in 2024? What didn't work? Where are we as a team? What would we like to improve? What would we like to say no to? And so,
and I think part of that is really being honest with yourself. I think a lot of times people want to try to sugarcoat, like, how was my last year? But really being honest and transparent, maybe not even with just yourself, with your team.
Yeah.
And I've had opportunities over the last couple of weeks to stand in front of my team and be very transparent and say, you know what? There were certain things that sucked about last year, and here they are, and mapped them all out. This is what it looked like, but these are also the things that we're doing to improve those. But I think you can't really give yourself a fair shake on 2025 or any year. Somebody's watching this podcast 5 years from now, until you're honest with where you came from and you're fully transparent and you're like, this is where we got in the weeds. Like, I've set some very distinct boundaries with my team because I identified these are all the areas where we got in the weeds, and I'm not going to allow that this year. I allowed it last year because it seemed like we had what we're going to talk about in a minute ago was a purpose behind why we were in the weeds. But in hindsight, I look at it and I say, no, we were in the weeds so much that it consumed us, and we weren't effective in all of these other areas because we were so focused over here, which didn't serve us well. And so, kind of being honest and working through those things as an organization, I think is super important.
Yeah, and you just crushed the second point on that, because C.S. Lewis was saying, I think leaders get caught on this too all the time. He says, we all want progress, but if you're on the wrong road, it doesn't mean you can't turn around.
Right.
And so whatever that value stream, whatever that thing is, sometimes because there has been success and you see the road success, sometimes we're going to force that thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Sometimes ego gets in the way.
Right.
You're like, we're going to make this work no matter what. Like
Right.
you were saying about the company that went 8 years on this program and never made any money. Right. There had to have been ego somewhere in there that said, no, we're going to keep pushing. So I think it comes back to what I was saying a minute ago, being honest and saying, this isn't working. And that's what I ask my team a lot. Be honest with me and say, you know what, this isn't working. Like right now, we're in a massive struggle with our marketing team. And it would be super easy for me to say, well, this is what we've been doing for 20 years. This was worked up till now. And then all of a sudden, something that you've done for 20 years consistently that's been successful, that drove the success of the business, and then the market shifts, and now you have an opportunity to either say, no, we're going to stick with this because this is what I've always done, or I'm going to try to shift with the market and figure out what I need to do in order to drive those customers in the door, because all of a sudden you see this major roadblock on something that was been very successful for a really long time.
Yeah, that's huge. And back to the being authentic and transparent, right? Sometimes sometimes I don't even think it's ego. It's because so many things have worked at times and you have that vision of it. And you have a team to help you get there, but at what point do you say no? And I think it's hard too for people. Well, we could look at Chick-fil-A, right? I don't think they've ever tried hamburgers, right?
Right.
They haven't. And so they know that value stream and that lane for them. And so they go down that. But I've seen too many people no, I'm just going to keep doing this and doing that. And so even for us, we look at some of the customer value stream and how it's made up, how much is involved with the supply chain, how much, and what that market's going to be moving forward. I mean, even with changes we see in the world today, big push for EV, let's say. You would be connected to this. but then there's another big push coming out from a market point of view with hydrogen and aspects of that. So there's always that change. I think, I know we both love Ramsey and all that. I think he says, if we find any sacred cows in the hall, we shoot them,
Right.
We've always done it this way. So I think that's a good point. And it's easy to get wrapped up in it, because in the middle of looking at that, there's still a million other things going on you have to execute. So also feeling the empowerment as a leader or entrepreneur in your business to step back and say, hey, we're going to do a stop on this. We'll do a 1 week, 30-day stop, and let's look at it as a team together, and let's go over it and make sure we're on the same. So, seldom do we take the stop.
Right.
Because there's too much backed up. It's just, we got to go. And that's why I say the be still and know, before you can seek first and find, you need to be still and know.
Yeah.
And in our world, to do that hard stop, to be still, is challenging because there's too many things running by, especially as a leader and leaders in our companies carrying those responsibilities as well. So
I think that those moments, at least for me in my own life, when I take those be still moments, those are the moments where I gain the most clarity.
Right.
Like if I'm down in the weeds and I'm trying to make all these decisions and I'm running and if I just stop, take a deep breath, and sometimes that deep breath could be a day, 2 days, a week, whatever that is, know yourself enough to know and say, or it could be, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take a deep breath until I get clarity, and I'm just going to wait for clarity. And then what I've noticed is when I take those moments, I absolutely it just begins to flow.
Yeah.
And then you get all this clarity, and then you can come back as a team and say, okay, we took this stop. What did you get from trying to get a moment of clarity? And what I've seen almost every single time with my team is that when we come together, we all get the same clarity. There might be a little bit different here and there, just a little tweak on it or whatever, but we all come together because we all have the same end goal in mind. But I recently actually just had one of those moments where, I was just in the weeds, especially coming out of 2024 with all the changes we made internally in our company and stuff. And then just coming back, I think sometimes my team doesn't like it when I have these moments because I come back with like all this new vision, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. But, we did a trip to Destin, Florida a few months ago, and I literally just kind of sat in the, in our Airbnb, and I just kind of sat and stared at my computer, and then all of a sudden it just started flowing. And then I got very good clarity on some really hard decisions that I had to make when I came back. And I think the thing about clarity too is that when you're clear and you know what you need to do and you make those decisions, it doesn't matter what resistance you get from people around you that may not agree with that decision, because you have such clarity, that that's the right decision. Because when you make decisions sometimes and you don't have that, it's easy for opinion to shift you around. Yeah. And so if you can get that clarity and you're just like, yes, I'm clear, this is the decision I'm making. You announce it to the team, this is the decision, I've made it, it is what it is. And, sometimes that means terminating people that have been around for a while or people that have big influence in organizations. And, that's what I had to do. I had to let somebody go that was, higher executive position. And, of course, it's a trickle down. It affects the entire team. And so you're talking to each team member and you're working them through that process. But all of those things came out of clarity for me. And so.
Yeah, clarity to the purpose, right?
Yeah.
We're getting back to that. And what we're talking about, entrepreneur, leader, we're also talking about an individual and organizational strategy. This is kind of where it starts. The hard stop to set back and reflect. And I'll throw this in. You and I shared this the other day at lunch. I saw this on Facebook or somewhere. So we're not at the end of 2025 yet. We know that, right? Yeah. Too late to go back to 2024. But I've always, I've had a couple of clients where I had them fill out a gratitude journal and actually give it, in one case it was a family member, and not give it to them as a Christmas gift, give it to them at Thanksgiving. You're thankful, and you gave them a gratitude. And it was life-changing for them. I saw this the other day, and I think moving forward, I'll just throw this out as a nugget if somebody wants to do it. I think it's a good way before we get to the end of 2025 and reflect. We're talking about being still and looking at 2024. Where are we? What's our position is? Two ways to do this. You can take a yellow sticky note and write down one good thing that happened per week and put it in here. Or you can write one thing you're grateful for that week and put it in here. When you get to the end of 2025, that's your first strategic action for 2026, is to open this jar, read through, if we were successful, all 52, and look at those. And I think it's good for us, too, not to look at the things necessarily that didn't work the way we wanted, but the things that went well, too. And how do we build off those? I'm a process-focused person. I normally see what's going wrong in the process first instead of what's going good.
Right.
And so I have to use tools like this to help, help me see the good in it. So I would encourage people, and here's the deal. Here's the deal for leaders. Do you want to stretch yourself and be a better leader? Last year I shared the rubber band. Rubber band's only good if it stretches, and it only stretches from one direction, from the inside out. As leaders, we stretch from the inside out. We can't pour into somebody else if we're not. But here's the stretch. You actually have to take the effort to go get the jar. You probably already got the sticky notes. And start this next week. You won't have 50, but start put in there. What's one good thing that happened? You're already 30% ahead on your strategic review for 2025 when you start going into 2026. So as we look at that clarity and stuff, also nothing wrong with looking at what went well, not just what didn't go well.
Well, in fact, when I did my review with the team a couple of weeks ago, I had on my PowerPoint, I had all the things we did good and all the things where we struggled.
Right.
And then you kind of go through those, because you obviously don't want to go from a position of y'all suck. We're gonna, you want to raise the highlight points, but you also want to be very true and with the team on where we didn't do well either.
Yeah, unless there's a real catastrophe going on, that +1 is always in work.
Yeah.
So. as Maxwell would say, we haven't failed, we're just learning.
Yeah.
And so I think that plays a big role too. Some of those things can be very hard and harsh learning lessons, but I know John even changed the name of one of his books to, instead of, learning from failing, it's like, we learned forward or whatever the way he said
Failing
it.
forward, I think, something like
failing
that.
forward. And failure's not a person, it's an event, but it's really a learning opportunity. And if we take the word fail out of it, what did we learn? Just as you shared with your team. Here's things that didn't go. Maybe you're out there in your team. What didn't go quite like we thought? What do we learn from that? How do we pull that around and grow from it and turn that into a +1? So rolling it out of that kind of gets us, and you already are hitting on it with the clarity, is the purpose. How do I find my purpose? Why am I here? Why is my organization here? And I think that's a big deal. And it takes some work. It's not easy. Even for me, I had to kind of dig through this, like, what is my why, And it's tough to sit down there and go, okay. And I went through this, and somebody's like, well, what's one word that describes you? One word. Oh, it's painful, right? You're sitting there and going, I don't know. And I actually asked all of my team at the last place. I had like 32 lean champions, and I asked them all to describe me in one word. And then I put it into kind of a word picture where it all mixed together. And so I could reflect off that too and go, as a leader, okay, here's 32 people who spend a lot of time with me. I'm developing them as continuous improvement leaders. What are their one-word thoughts of me? And then write my word down and start going through that and go, because really,
did you see any common trend in that when you asked 32 people? Was there 32 distinctly different answers, or were you able to kind of say you can pinpoint it down to one thing?
There's 4 max, but there's 1 to 4, and they're all in there. So
was that painful or was that good?
Yes.
Good. That's exactly the answer I expected.
Yeah.
So do you want to share with everybody what kind of was your key takeaway from that?
One of them is determined and a learner. I still love to learn. I still learn to study and all that. And in being determined, you can be very focused to not let something go till it gets done. Some of those would say I'm the king of follow-up. If we have this thing, we truly need to follow every month and all that. I think the phrase that somebody used with me once, and I use it too, is I will be the dog that gets the bone.
Right.
Because it's too important to the team not to do it.
Right.
It's not just a personal thing with me. I think this thing right here, this is super important. And so one of those words is very focused, also trustworthy, determined, supportive, team-like. So those were the ones, but that determined can go a little too far on the determined. And it was a positive and negative, right? Because change is uncomfortable. I've always used the phrase, like you were saying for your organization, you can change, or you can be changed by the change, but change is coming. What we realize these days, change is coming at a pace far faster than it's ever been. So either we adapt as leaders and embrace that change and move forward with it, or we'll be changed.
Yep.
And so I was at an aerospace company for 40 years that made landing gears for the F-22, F-16, the 777s. We designed it, built the first ones for Boeing. We're building those, and we were in acquisition. And part of it was a union facility, and that they ended up with like 3 or 4 really big landing gear facilities. And when they merged, it's like, well, who wants to work together to be better? And one group said, we're not interested in that. And literally for about 6 months, I was one of the guys that checked out the boxes from hundreds of team members, from 600 team members to 0. And they shut the facility down in Euless, Texas.
Because they didn't want to work together?
Didn't want to change.
Oh. So you know the Tony Robbins quote on change? Tony Robbins always says that people change when the pain exceeds the pain of change.
Right.
And so I took that early in my career as like, okay, do I want to wait for the pain that forces me to change? Or do I want to make a conscious decision that before I get to that pain point, I'm going to make that change that I know I need to make? And that happens, somebody's bank account goes to 0. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, now I'm feeling the pain of that account being at zero because I can't pay my bills.
Right.
So all of a sudden they're motivated to change. Maybe they need to go get a job. Maybe they need to go sell more contracts, whatever that looks like. And so it's the mindset of saying, I'm going to make the change before the pain happens rather than waiting for the pain, because the journey of change through pain is a lot worse than just making the change, And so that happens in relationships. People, they'll drive the relationship to the point of pain and then, I got to make this change or I'm going to lose this person, rather than recognize, wow, these are the things wrong in my relationship. I need to start working on those so that I can make the relationship better. They just wait for the pain to happen. And so, just talking about change, it's really, if you can be proactive on change and get in front of it, then you have a lot less pain in your life when you're dealing with those situations.
Yeah, I think that's part of this, to the purpose, right? What kind of change, if you know your why and all of that, were you involved or made decisions maybe you didn't need to be in, but get to what is your purpose statement? What wakes you up in the morning, Why are you here? Why is your company here? And it's not that it couldn't be for profit. Everybody has a different value system and all of that. I had to go through several iterations on my own to get there of why am I here, and it's, I don't know if Maxwell or who said it, but they said this phrase once, and it so resonated with me, to walk slowly through the crowd to hear what's not being said. And that just hit me, because the pace of life is so fast, and especially in entrepreneurship or leadership, there's really not a slow pace. It's high level, you're on it. So as a leader, how can I walk through slowly and hear what's not being said? What is a team member going through? What is a family going through? What is happening with this product line or this sale? What's going on with this certain market piece? What's going on with this? What are the leaders carrying? What are the carriers of an organization carrying at what level? And to walk through that and to really be sensitive enough to sit there and say what that is. And it took me a while, and I wrote down several for me, is like, how do I help other people get to that point and find their purpose? I'm on this today is because I feel like maybe I can help somebody find that purpose. And if you find that purpose, instead of doing 10 seemingly really great things, you could be doing 4 and crushing it for you and your team. It doesn't mean that the 6 things are bad. Doesn't mean that they don't have some worth or value. They just may not be the key value for you and your team. And I think that's the other part of what you're saying, even on that aspect of walking through change. Sometimes it's, why did we stick with a value stream for 8 years not making money? Because it was comfortable. There was always that hope. There was changes made to adapt to it, but none of them ever worked.
Right.
And so, I can remember sitting in a strategy session and we had numbers and we all talked about it and says, well, why would we keep doing that? And somebody said, well, why wouldn't we keep doing that? And we kept doing it.
Right.
And it was like, okay. And back to the aerospace company where, 600 people and their families, they lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And because they didn't want to adapt.
All because they couldn't adapt and change.
And they're like, well, we'll keep the machine side open. We'll do this and that, but we'd like to do the assembly over here because you guys are great at this, but we think it'd be better valued over here. Everybody just said no. And even back to everything rises and falls on leadership, the leadership of the organization as well, to position that. And so in some cases, companies, like you said, relationships end, key people leave, because change, people aren't able to adapt to it and look at it. So I think that's important. So the purpose, why are you here? What's my mission? But getting that condensed, you and I have been in this stuff a long time, and we've seen many companies that have a mission and vision statement, and they might even ask the people to memorize it, but nobody really feels or has that inside of them of what is our mission and vision. And to me, I'd like to move beyond that. And I think the reason people don't connect to it, because it doesn't get the purpose.
Right.
And so for me personally, I'd like to kind of do away with the mission and the vision and all of that. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but I think in today's world, to connect with the heart and with the people and to be focused so people don't think we're wearing them out doing everything, is what is our purpose?
Yeah.
I think it dials it in a little bit deeper. Oh, what's your mission statement? We just went through an ISO audit, for all the quality stuff, and everybody has a badge. Guy goes around and, oh, so what's your vision? And people turn their badge over. My vision is that we operate in excellence.
Right.
And they may only been with this 3 weeks. And so, once again, there's nothing wrong with that. But in the stuff we're talking about, I think there's another level that moves us as leaders and the organization forward at a more intentional pace that gets it where it's supposed to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like Robert Smith said this. This was his example. The purpose of my life is to touch hearts that are hurting, enjoy laughter, and create permanent abundance for others and myself in a most joyful and playful way while feeling like a giggle. And he wrote a book about, the name of his book is 20,000 Days. And he's like, how many days do you have left?
Right.
What are you going to do with today?
Yeah.
He even makes a comment, who can you give a standing ovation to today? What he really triggers questions about what can I do? And I think whether you're running a facilities business or whether you're running an aerospace company, the one thing all that has in common is people. Mm-hmm. And we're human beings, not human doings. And so that connection with people has never been more important than it is today. So I think that get a piece of paper, start writing down names, ask your friends or others like I did. And to your credit, and asking is like, yeah, some of those names, like, oh, okay, that wasn't the best name I was looking for about Rick.
Right.
Rick's going to till he gets it. But also he was trustworthy, he had a servant attitude. So there was only really 4 or 5 out of that 32 that really summed him up. But it was good to sit there and reflect and then me ask, as a leader, am I executing on my purpose what I believe it is?
Right.
If not, I'm misaligned and I need to adjust.
Well, in fact, I told my team a couple weeks ago, I said what I've recognized coming into this new year is that what's in my heart is not what I'm physically portraying to the team. I recognized a disconnect between what my heart felt and sensed about individuals and how my message was coming across. And so I think that's part of, innately we all have hurt and pain. And so we're trying to work through that hurt and pain. And sometimes that hurt and pain becomes a filter, a negative filter between where our heart is at and how we want to respond to people. And sometimes we build walls. And so because of those walls, you might be thinking to yourself, my heart feels one thing, but my message is giving something completely different. And I recognize that about myself going into this year, because part of what you were saying was, I asked my team kind of the same questions. I always consider myself a legacy guy. Like when I was 16 years old, I was studying legacy, which was very odd for a 16-year-old, but always thinking about what are they going to say about me at my funeral, and how does that translate back to my purpose? My purpose was this is how I wanted to live my life. This was the mission for my life. Did I get that message across? Was I able to let go of my hurt and pain and whatever things I'm trying to do to protect myself, to actually get through that, to get that message and purpose out to the people around me and be able to serve people the way that my heart wants to serve, right. Unfiltered, let it go, regardless of the hurt and the pain or whatever's been going on in my world, to be able to just let that go and say, you know what, I'm going to serve you no matter where I'm at or what I feel as an individual, because part of my purpose is I want to serve individuals, but sometimes we get stuck in the weeds in our own world. And then, like you said, I really appreciated what you said a second ago, slow down and look at the world around you. And I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, is life pushing us, or are we pushing our life with purpose? And if we take those two things and we look back, it's like, am I just going through the motions? Am I on the river of life just flowing down the river, and I'm looking around and everybody else is just flowing with me? Or am I living my life on purpose with intention, and I'm saying, okay, I wake up every single day with purpose and intention. what am I going to do today on purpose and with intention to help serve other people? And through that, you look back in your life, you know what? I designed my life the way I wanted my life to be and the way that I felt God purposed me in my own life. And then taking that and then waking up every single day. So I think purpose starts with the individual first.
For sure.
And then when you take a team, like you sit your team down and you say, what are your dreams and ambitions? What is your purpose?
Right.
And then how to take a team and then mold and move that team around to where each individual on the team is living their purpose and their dream. And it's a constant conversation inside of my organization where I sit down with my team members and I'm like, what is your dream? What is your purpose and your passion? That's another P we could add to that. Because passion drives, when you wake up every morning, you have your purpose and your passion, you have a reason to wake up. And so if I see a person that's misaligned, and I think it's in the Good to Great book where it's like it might be the wrong person in the wrong seat.
Yes.
And so if I have the right person in the wrong seat, and I can have one conversation. I had one this morning. Can't talk about it yet, but I had one conversation this morning where an individual in the organization came to me and they shared some dreams and ambitions they had amongst themselves, and that dream and ambition perfectly aligned with the dreams and vision that I see for the company. And I had no idea that this person was even thinking that way. And when I heard that, it was literally like a mountain weight came off of me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was like a God moment where this person came to me and they said, here's where I see myself. And I said, that's a huge hole I'm trying to fill. And then the two just intertwined. And it was like, you just walk away inspired and excited. And you're like, yeah, this is really awesome that this happened this way. But I think as leaders, we really have to focus on leading by example first.
For sure.
If they
Absolutely.
see you as a leader trying to live out your purpose, trying to build your dreams and things like that, and then you give them a space where they can vocalize what they're trying to do, what their dreams and ambitions are, and it helps them get in their purpose. And I mean, it's just an amazing way to live and be in an organization,
I would say too, what you just hit on, I think to find your purpose, you find the passion first. If you find that passion, that's going to lead you to your purpose.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think you can have one without the other. And I think that's the deal. Sometimes we're saying yes to things we're not passionate about, or what drives. I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about helping people. It's easier for me to get to my purpose because I'm passionate about helping people. To your point, and even like that conversation today, does that conversation happen if we don't slow down and walk slower through the crowd? And we're in the real world. If you're in a company that has 100, 200, 300 people, we live in a world where some people, they are just doing for the paycheck today. But for us, and if you're a leader and your leaders like us, yeah, management manages the status quo, manages day to day. But if you're a leader, part of that legacy for us is to pull others forward and help them develop and help them grow into who they can be. In this case, if we get to that point, hopefully, who they want to be and how they want to add to their team or society. But I think that all connects together. I'm glad you said that word because I kind of had the context of that in there, but not as a P word. But I don't think you can have purpose without the passion.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, we can get kind of beat down by the journey because it's hard. You and I were talking before this started, but like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'll just,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
Very hard work.
Yeah.
Very, very hard work.
Yeah.
But that passion that drives that is a key part of it. And so I think that's it. And Covey talks about, time management and urgent important. And for me, I just have this message resonating as a matter of fact, my word for 2025 for me is even purpose, because there's so many, how do you manage priorities? Do I do this or do I do that? Do I stop that? Do I talk to this? I'm moving away from time management to purpose management. I'm moving away from necessarily a mission and vision statement to a purpose statement. Why are we here? What are we doing? Where are we going? How do we help each other get there?
Yeah.
What does that look like? How can I come alongside you to help you get there? I just think it really flips it, and you hit it very well. It takes it back to heart. I was mentoring a young guy asked me last week, we're in a session with somebody, and so one person he worked with is just in Excel numbers, and so numbers is his thing, and the small company somewhere this guy was working with, and he was wanting to reframe something in a way to here's how this pie should look, and he was asking me how, and as we talked about a little bit, it was numbers, and he said, I said, well, if you pitched it like this and this numbers, it would be his language. Another guy, same facility, different deal. He was running towards something that was different, and I said, have you connected with his heart yet? Yeah, he's looking at something every day at the end of the day, but what is important to him? Have you connected with his heart? And before we walked away from that session that day, and just that coaching and mentoring there was two situations, and growing and developing both to get better, two pretty significant things that could impact their company. One was connecting with the language, with the numbers, but another one he would have never thought of, I think, unless that's why we bounce these things back and forth, is connect with the heart. I think that's super important. When our people see that we're authentic and transparent, and we'll be open with them, and then we'll bring them into it in that process like you did, I think that's everything. So after that, these are the pruning things we're doing. We're pruning and saying no to this and that, changing this. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this. And pruning could be, I'm not going to be so closed up anymore. I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to be more open and transparent with my team. Pruning could be, we're not going to be in that marketplace or that value stream, but we're going to be in this one over here. It could say, well, we're going to say no to that because it wasn't enough locations, wasn't enough revenue, it didn't fit. We'd like to do it. They're so nice. Those people are awesome. They're great people. Their culture fits with us, but it doesn't fit anything else. So we prune and maybe say no to some stuff so we can say yes. And then it just gets into practice of it. And, this purpose process, and I don't know, as we kind of close or whatever, kind of look at the steps of this, of practice. How do you put this in practice? And in my head, I just put it down into these 10 steps. And the first one was, like we said in the beginning, just be still and know. Like you said, take a retreat, step back. I would just probably fully say, nothing's going to totally cater. Could, but hopefully not.
Yeah.
If you take 2 or 3 days and just catch your breath and step back. What are you not seeing? What are you not hearing? How can you position yourself to truly hear the heart of your team?
Yeah.
And so be still and know. I don't think we'll ever hear or see until we get still. We're not going to get the no without the still. And I think our favorite book is like Be Still and Know. The still is first, the no is next.
Yep.
And you got to do the still step. It's so hard in today's world to get the still step in, but it's so critical. And so out of everything on this, get still before you know, and then seek. Then you'll know what to seek first and find once you get still and know, I believe. Then the pruning. You go through the pruning. And this next one I put on there is because you just mentioned it in the interaction you had today. What's the conversation we're not having that we're avoiding? Or what's the conversation we're not having with somebody who has a concept or something or a dream that we could help outside here or inside here? Either way, what are people dreaming? What's their heart? What's their passion? So many times, I've talked for years, but, I had like PhDs in conflict avoidance. So,
Yeah.
so having the conversation was never on my top 1,000 list. I just won't have it.
So I said something to the team, which my daughter actually told me really resonated with her, which was, I told the team, I said, if you have a conflict, schedule it, put it on the calendar.
Yes.
Scheduled conflict. So if you know you have to address a person on an issue, just tell that person, hey, I'd like to meet with you at 10 or 2 o'clock on Thursday. Well, it does a couple things. It keeps you from procrastinating. It keeps you from pushing off. It helps you to get prepared. And it also gives you time to process and work through the emotion, because you just certainly, if you're dealing with conflict, you don't want to come at that person with all of your emotion being boiled up. it's the old thing, if you're in that conflict, go take a break from each other and then come back at a later date. But one of the things I've tried to tell the team here at IFS is if you have a conflict, schedule that conflict. There's nothing worse than you're sitting in your office and somebody's upset with you and they come barging in. It feels like an attack. Whereas if you can schedule that conflict and you're sitting across the table as peers and you say, you know what, this hurt me or this offended me or I disagree with you on this or whatever it is, it feels like more of a safe environment where someone can actually express what they're at with no emotion. Just here's what I need to say, and then allow that person time to respond. And I think it's that listening, responding, versus I'm so busy thinking about how I'm going to respond, and then I just respond.
Right.
And so it's that whole process. And so my daughter actually told me the other day, she said, you know what, Dad, I really took that to heart, taking that time to just schedule conflict, put it on the calendar just like a meeting, especially in the business world. I can't tell you how many times I'm guilty of it myself. I think my EQ, my emotional intelligence when I was young in business was really bad. I would blow off at the handle. But because of that, I got myself in situations that then started to cost me financially.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden that was that pain. And I said, oh, I got to fix this. And so my EQ started to rise and I realized, you know what? There's a better way to handle conflict, especially in the business world. And so that's how I like to operate is doing scheduled times on the calendar where it's like, hey, Rick, right, you and I are going to meet. You know what?
Right. And then 15 years ago, Rick would have said, well, Dan, I'm going to have to resign now. I got a conversation.
Right. I don't want to hear this conversation. So,
sorry.
And I will caveat this by saying, if you're going to do that, do not call your team member at 10 o'clock at night and say, hey, I want to meet with you in the morning.
No.
Do it the same day, at 8 o'clock in the morning, say, I'd love to meet with you. How's 2 o'clock this afternoon? But, I've had people put that on me where I get an email. I recently got one. It was 10:30 at night. I was just going to bed. I happened to check my phone one last time before I went to sleep, and I opened up, and there was this email that was full of conflict.
Right.
And I'm like, man, why'd you do that to me? Now I'm going to be up all night. So, if you're going to do that, definitely be conscious of the other person and don't put that other person in a position, especially if it's a manager to a peer, because all they're going to do is lay in bed all night and think they're going to get fired the next morning.
And I think off that, any team can be one conversation away from a significant breakthrough.
Oh, I agree 100%. And
that's why this is on here, the conversation.
Yep.
The one you're not having, the one you need to have. And it's a great point to schedule it not 2 weeks in advance so somebody's worrying about it. Susan Scott.
Well, and that's true with positive conversations
as
too,
well.
Because I've scheduled meetings with someone and they're so in their own head about what it is that I want to talk about, and it's actually a promotion or a pay raise, and they walk in and they've already catastrophized in their own mind so bad that they walk in expecting that they're going to get fired, and you're like, no, actually, here I want to give you a promotion or a raise, and you've done such a great job, and thanks for all you do and all that. And so, you have to be very careful on both ends of that.
And sooner is better, and timely. And like you said, Susan Cox says, think of yourself of going over in this field and having a conversation. Put everything down that's here. Put the suitcase down of your past, what you think, your perceptions, your whatever it is. And as an organization, even in crucial conversations, they talk about one team member's going down this path, going down this path. In both those situations, the key thing is everybody's going to the same place.
Yeah.
More so if you are aligned on purpose. If your purpose is aligned, you're connecting to the heart of the organization and the team members, then you're going over there. If you take that context in mind as you're doing that, then you're setting it over to the side and you're just going to go over this field where, because we're all going over there together, we're just going to have this conversation. And there's no weight or heaviness to how it's going to go because we're in this together. We're going over there. That's our purpose. And since that's our shared purpose, we're going over there. We're going to have the conversation. The challenge is, which holds a lot of organizations back, is key team members of not having it. And I know a lot of even senior executives would think, oh, we have an open door policy. And in their hearts, they did and they would, but that doesn't mean that people feel comfortable of going to a CEO or somebody and just walking in and going, I have these concerns. So I think as leaders, back to what you said in the beginning, having that authentic, transparent opening as a leader so people can trust us. But the conversation we're not having could be the door that's not opened, that next door. There's doors there. And being authentic, being transparent, having that purpose, connecting with the people leads us to that door. And it's the door to the deeper relationship, the development of people in our organization, the next key customer, helping a customer out, helping them find their purpose and value. But going in these steps gets you to that door, and then you already hit on the +1, is just keep giving that +1, that extra degree, that 1%. And then I think this is a big one, even coming out of where we were, is you can't stay there. You can't, I use the term, you can't stay in Egypt for 400 years.
Right.
Complacency will kill you. And I heard somebody say, well, if you're stuck or whatever, you're not a tree, get up and move.
Right.
Like, you're a person, you're not a tree. So if you feel stuck, it's okay to get up and go ahead and move. As complacency and having that level of comfort is easy with the change. And so you can't, there's not an organization or leader in the world today that if they think they can stay where they are is going to have the level of legacy, influence, and success for their team. You can't stay where you are.
Yeah.
You cannot stay the same. And then to have the courage to not stay the same, the courage to have the conversation, the courage to not to change, and then to actually put action to it. There's a phrase in favorite book too, says, now finish doing it that your joy may be full. A lot of people don't have joy because we're not finishing doing it. So you hit you prune, you hit the conversation, you open the door, you get the +1, you realize you can't stay here, you have the courage to change, you keep doing it. And then the one thing is, back to the 1 degree, but what's the one thing? What's the one thing that I can do today? And I heard this phrase, you and I had lunch the other day, and I was sharing it. I think it was the director of The Chosen. I think he was talking with Jordan Peterson or whatever, and I think Dr. Peterson was asking him about, how do you know what to work on 3 years, 5 years from now? And he just said, I'm just trying to take care of the 5 and 2, the 5, 2. I'm just trying to take care of today and execute that to the best of my ability. But I think that brings me back, what's the one thing Rick needs to do today? Not 5 things, not 3 things, not 10 things. What's the one thing? So I think this systematically, the be still and know, and you go through these steps of purpose and you get to that point, then you just keep doing that 1%, that 1 degree, do that one thing. What's that one conversation we're not having? What's that one step away from staying here, that one step forward? I think all of that brings us to that purpose. We're fulfilled as leaders and entrepreneurs. Our people are going to feel way more fulfilled. And I just think that's the difference, and that's the legacy of we're actually adding value to people that's going to make a difference, not just at work, but at home, in the community, other people they come in contact with. And the hope is they're going to take that as well, and exponentially that will go out and multiply and help others. So that's kind of the 4 P's. You added the 5th, so I'll edit this and we'll put passion in there.
There you go.
The pre-purpose is the passion. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, I enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Yeah, what a thrill. I always enjoy hanging out together.
Yeah, this was awesome. I mean, I believe people are really going to get a lot out of this.
Awesome.
I think it's going to serve people well. So
good.
Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate you being on the podcast, and look forward to maybe doing a few more of these. I'd love to do another one maybe on culture or something like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would love it. Always
would be
love
awesome.
talking with you, Dan.
Yeah.
It's always a joy.
So, well, thank you so much, and thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you next time.